So the bowl will still be a little bit warm to the touch, so I'm getting my towel. But you can see we've more than doubled in size here, so we're giving that a thumbs up, and we're ready to go on to the next phase. We're going to have to give the dough a quick kneading and let it rise a second time while the oven heats up. So before we even start that, I'm setting my oven up to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. That takes my oven about 20 minutes to get up to that temperature. If you're not quite ready to serve it up at this point, you can sort of let the dough sit a little bit longer than that, but the dough needs to have a second rising for about 15-20 minutes and can go a little bit longer depending on the demands of your customers. So here again I'm putting a little more Pam on my thing, and I'm just doing it on a floured wooden cutting board, and I'll scoop this out and fold it a few times and then divide it in half. But you can see it's a nice loose wet blob. Just another reason I just prefer to use the spatula to fold it with, because it makes less of a mess than me. But it just needs to be sort of squashed down and folded over a few times there to sort of get some of the air out and loosen it up. So a little bit more flour on the board, and then we'll cut it in half and then cover it with a clean dish towel to let it have a second rising. So here I'm just cutting in half, and this will give me, 2 full-size pizzas. You could do smaller pizzas if you want, but that's the nice thing about pizza dough. You can do what you want. Tidying up a little bit, and now we'll just cover these up while we're waiting for the oven to heat up. It's also good if you can let it go longer to let the oven heat up even longer. I mean, I have a pretty big pizza stone in there, so it's probably not getting up to 500 itself. It's getting pretty good and toasted up well enough for my matters. But if you can wait longer, you can give your pizza stone a good half hour to warm up. That will give you even better crust. But you can see it's taken a while for me to get up there. We're getting close. 495. And now it's there, so now I can start assembling my pizza. So as I said before, I like to do it on top of a piece of parchment paper, because that just makes it easier to get it in and out of the oven without making a big mess. So I put the parchment paper on the pizza peel and then sort of sprinkle it with flour so that the dough can slide a little bit around a little bit as I sort of stretch it out. So now I'm going to just sprinkle a little bit of flour on it and get out a small bowl, put some flour in so I can sort of dust my fingertips. I'm just going to sort of press it out with my fingertips, sort of just poking it. And I don't use a roller or anything. This is a lot more fun and, looks tough at parties. But you just sort of keep poking it and working its way out and stretching out the outer rim, because that's where it seems to be the thickest. In the middle, it's not too thick, but it'll sort of stretch out the middle on its own. So I sort of work the edges around and use the pizza peel as sort of a guide to sort of know what the circle is, and just keep adjusting it till I'm happy with it. But redust the fingers now and then to keep them from sticking to the dough, because I don't want to put a lot of flour on the dough, because I want to keep it sticky and wet so it'll like puff up really good. So I just keep working it and working it till I think it looks pretty good. It doesn't have to be perfectly circular. That way, it makes it look like it was, handmade there. So now I just get rid of some of the extra flour, because that'll just sort of, burn in the oven or toast a little too much. So you tidy that up a little bit. And now we're ready to dress it with the pizza sauce. So as I said before, I'm just using a canned pizza sauce today, but I sometimes make my own, which is pretty easy with canned diced tomatoes and a little basil and some garlic, and that's not very hard. But today, that's not my focus, so I'm just going to use some of this, which ends up tasting much the same. And so it takes about 3 or 4 sort of heaping tablespoons, and just use the back of the spoon to smear it around. It doesn't need a real thick coating. also seems to sort of expand when you cook it, so just a nice sort of thin coating, smoothed out the way you like it, is more than enough. So now I'm just sprinkling the cheese on. This is about 8 ounces of mozzarella that I shredded up just before. I think hand shredding a block tastes much better than the stuff out of the bag myself, which is easier and in a pinch will do, but the Sorrento cooks up much nicer than like the Kraft shredded stuff in a bag. And you just sort of, tidy it up and spread it out. And it doesn't look like much, but this will like cook up quite nicely and give you more than enough cheese on it. And so I'm making the kids' pizza first, so now I'm putting on the pepperonis. And so here I generally just completely cover the top of the with pepperonis. These will shrink as you cook them, so it won't look quite as covered once it cooks down there. But I just put a complete layer over the whole thing. And now we're ready to put it in the oven. So as you can see, we get off the extra crumbs so they won't burn, and we put it in our 500-degree oven on top of our pizza stone. So here there's no sort of too much sliding necessary, just sort of push it back and a little bit of a jiggle and it will slide right off the peel with the paper. And so now I put on the timer for a pizza with just cheese and pepperoni. I'm going for about 11 minutes. This should be about the right time, and we'll sort of keep an eye on it so it doesn't get too toasted or not too toasted. So maintaining our 500-degree temperature. And so while that's in the oven, we can get our second pizza ready. So here again, I'll just get out the peel with more parchment paper and repeat the same procedure. So you can see the dough is pretty wet, pretty loose, and doesn't really spring back too much when you pull it. I'm sort of looking for the thicker spots and sort of trying to stretch those out, and they tend to be around the outer edges. So I keep sort of working it around and moving the peel till I got it all sort of fairly well evened out there. And just keep poking it and keeping my fingertips dry with a little bit more flour till it looks good. And so that's looking pretty good. I still have a few minutes to go before the other pizza is done, so I'm going to just cover this until the other pizza comes out. I don't like to put the sauce on it before it's ready to go in the oven, so it doesn't get my crust too gloopy. So I'll just cover it and let it rest a little bit more for a bit. Okay, it's been 11 minutes. Let's check on the pizza, see what it looks like. Certainly smells good. So here I'm just going to slide it right out onto my cutting board. And there I don't even need the peel. I can just grab the piece of paper and slide it right onto my cutting board. Which is handy because the other pizza is sitting on the pizza peel at the moment. But now we can just sort of slide out the parchment paper and we're ready to serve it up. I'm going to let it rest for a moment since I don't have any customers around today. Normally I'd send this out to the table and the girls would start devouring it while I started assembling the second pizza, which we'll do right now, following pretty much the same steps as before. A little tomato sauce. Not too much. and some cheese. Sometimes if I'm making it with chicken that's already been cooked or pork that's already been cooked, I'll put the pork on and then the cheese so it doesn't dry out too much. But now I'm putting the pepperonis and then I'll put the veggies on top. I like to put the veggies on top because they're really full of water, so they need that extra sort of heat and toasting up. So here I'm making a nice design with my red peppers so it looks nice, but however you like to toss things on is up to you. And now with the olives and the peppers, I'll just pickled peppers, I'll just sprinkle those around. I like to put the onions on last so that they get as much toasting as possible there. So, but we just sort of sprinkle it on until we like it. The one thing you have to keep in mind when putting a lot of veggies or stuff on top of the pizza is it will take extra time to cook. So this one I'll probably start around 13 minutes and then check on it to see how it's doing. Make sure the veggies are getting cooked and the crust is not getting too toasted. Okay, and now it's time to put this one in the oven. So you can see with this one, with all the stuff on the top, if you had to sort of slide it in, without the parchment paper, I'd have onions and stuff all over the inside of the oven. But here, a couple jiggles and it's in sweet. And so now let's toast it up. Okay, so let's do a taste testing. As you can see, I got a pretty nice light fluffy crust that's nicely toasted on the bottom, on the edges. And you can see I even developed a giant air bubble, which is always popular in our family. Everyone wants the toasted cheesy part with the air bubbles. Very professionally done. Taste testing. Hot but delicious. Yummy, yummy. Thumbs up for this one. Almost time to check on this pizza. It's been in there a little over 10 minutes now. You can see the dough is puffing up and bubbling away. Oh, there's the timer. Let's check on the pizza. Looking pretty good, but I think the veggies could use a little bit more toasting up on the top. So I'm going to give it 3 more minutes. Okay, now another minute and a half to go. And there's the timer again. Let's take another look to see if it's ready. This is also impressive at parties. People really think you know what you're doing there as you're sort of hand checking it. Now it looks nice and toasted with a nice dark crusty cheese. And you can slide it right off onto my cutting board. Do be careful, the oven's pretty hot. The parchment paper is not, though. So now I've cut it up, do another taste test, another light fluffy crust.
Toasty crust. Buy from below the hill.
And that's me looking silly. Anyways, this is how I make my pizzas. I hope you enjoy it and make fabulous pizzas yourself. They're fun, and it takes about 2 hours from start to finish, so but nothing's particularly hard, and if you have a mighty KitchenAid mixer, that's a reason to get it out. So bye from Below the Hill Studios, and till next time.